Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And today we kick off our Modern Horizons 3 marathon. There are a lot of cards, despite the name Modern Horizons 3. There are a lot of cards good for Commander in the set, so much that we cannot contain it all within one episode. So here's the game plan for you guys. Today we are going to do a tier list of non-commanders. So tier list of things that go into the 99, excluding MDFCs, because next week we're going to do an MDFC tier list because there are 3 new cycles of MDFCs. And then we're also going to have an episode where we point out underrated cards or our favorite cards, things that people are not talking about. And then Tomer gonna go solo with the commander tier list as well, as long as the pre-con upgrades as usual. So that is our Modern Horizons 3 content strategy here. There's just so much that we need like 5 episodes to cover it. But today, we're doing the tier list. Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am so hyped for this set. So gonna be a fun few weeks talking about Modern Horizons 3.
Tomer, Budget Commander, how are you doing?
Commander Horizons, you mean, right? What's this Modern Horizons you're talking about? Oh my goodness. Oh.
We have one podcast for Modern and 6 for Commander. It's fine.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Krim, the Asian Avenger. Commander Enjoyer? You definitely don't play Modern.
I mean, like, I do not play Modern. Modern's dead to me, so this is great. I'm excited to see the set.
And I am the Codfather Richard. Well, sometimes they just blend both because we have a Tarmogoyf precon in here. So you can play Modern in Commander now. So let us go through the tier list today. So remember, this is going to be non-commanders. So there's going to be like Nadu that people are going to be talking about, the new Eldrazi, stuff like that. We're going to save that for another episode. Before we get into it, though, today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Guard. Premium protection for your trading cards. So all the accessories you see us use on this channel are provided by Ultimate Guard. So check out ultimateguard.com. And also Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. You can skip all the time, typing, and work associated with buy listing. Their curated service lets you send in as many cards as you want with buy list value of $1 or more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. Get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. So thank you to our sponsors. And it's time for the Ultimate Guard comment of the week. So last week, we talked about the biggest mistakes you can make in Commander. Top comment, RC Crisp. Wonder if Richard is going to say, quote, playing good cards so you annoy the rest of the table and getting yourself killed, end quote.
That does sound like something you would say.
I stand by it. I've given up on this one. It's like
Don't run good cards.
You can only repeat yourself so many times. If people don't get it, they don't get it. You move on. We move on from this. Play your combo pieces down.
Basically,
go ahead. Be my guest. Do it.
If Richard says anything is an S on this, it means it's awful and do not run it. So just shout out.
That is true. Do you reverse? Do you reverse? It's so good that it gets you killed. So it's actually a D.
So it's actually F.
You reverse Uno it. All right, let's go. We have a lot of cards today. We're gonna shove them into this tier list. Probably the thing that everyone was dreading is the new free spell cycle. So there's 5 cards, 1 for each color, and they are quote unquote free. And we're gonna see how it stacks up against the old cycle and against each other. So Flare of Cultivation. This is the green one. 1 green sorcery. You may sack a non-token green creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand, then shuffle. Tomer and I gave it a B. Krim gave it an A. Seth gave it an S. Seth, you gotta justify this Kodama's Reach.
Okay.
Do you even play Kodama's Reach anymore?
Well,
You
it's
put
gotten a little
basics in your
harder
deck?
because I don't have enough basics. But if I have enough basics, I still play it. And remember, not everyone is like us. If you look on EDH Rec, Cultivate is the 4th most played card in Commander. It is incredibly heavily played, and I'm sure part of that's because it shows up in a lot of precons, but this is one of the most heavily played cards in Commander. You got to pay not one more mana, but an additional green mana in the cost. It cultivates double generic and green. This is 2 green and generic. Otherwise, it's the exact same card, and you get the option of casting it for free. How can it not be an S tier card? Is Cultivate a B to you? I feel like this is whatever you score a Cultivate as plus something because you might cast it for free sometimes.
This is the most unplayable B card I've ever seen in my life. It's like Rampant Growth, right? So I never play Rampant Growth because there are better alternatives, but the card is just so powerful, you can't give it anything less than a B. So this is Cultivate, but harder to cast. Double green is a real cost. So normally in 4 or 5 color decks, like you are trying to scrape together a single green mana to then cast your ramp and like fix the rest of your mana base, right? So a double green on turn 3 is actually a big deal. But the bigger deal is you will never cast this for free. So I was looking. Are there like 0 to 5 mana value creatures in green that are non-token that you're willing to sacrifice? Like I consider like a turn 4 free Cultivate a win still, by the way, right? There's nothing. Wood Elves. If you look at the EDH Rec top 20, 30, 40, Wood Elves is the only creature that's played that can be sacked. Everything else is like a mana dork. I guess Eternal Witness, but are you Eternal Witnessing on turn 3 to do something useful? Everything else is like a Toski, like a card draw piece, like a Beast Whisperer. Like there's nothing to sacrifice to this effect. So I don't think it's worth it, let alone you have to play 2 basics. Like after we talk about the 12 MDFCs or whatever coming in the set, like there's no room for basics for this mediocre Cultivate. Like I don't.
Oh, come on now. Mediocre Cultivate. Boo.
It's harder to cast, and it's always the same effect. You will very rarely use the free effect because what are you sacking? A Boreal Grazer? Was that what you're playing? You're one of a Boreal Grazer? Like Tomer gave it. Krim gave it an A.
That's because I thought.
What are you sacking to
speed? So now it just went down to a B.
Oh,
so because it's the only cycle of the cycle that's sorcery. I thought it was instant speed. I guess it's not. It's going down to a B in real time. I do agree.
I mean,
with
it's a tapped forest. It's kind of the same, right? Like, what are you doing? I guess you can hold up a counter spell and then
you can hold up, but doing it at instant speed is the world's difference, right? But yeah, like I think that now that it's not instant speed, yeah, you're right. It's pretty bad. I think Cultivate is just already kind of maybe mediocre at best now.
Thanks.
So I despise ramp. I despise everything about it. And like Richard's right, it has to be at a B because it could potentially be free. However, I mean, I just play 3 visits. I just play any of those cards now because we're playing less and less. Like there's just so many good like multi typed lands that are coming out that I kind of just don't really like 3 mana ramp spells anymore. And like this one, like I could still justify maybe Sky Shroud claim because it gets 2 forests, but like this one and Cultivate's starting to feel much worse now that this exists. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really like this all that much. This is like a low B, barely, like probably moving towards a C+.
So I'm like between an A and a B. I think that of all of these, this is the one where I'm least likely to sacrifice something and cast it for free because like Richard said, I'm not going to be sacrificing most of my green creatures unless I'm running like a bunch of Wood Elves, Farhaven Elves and stuff like that. Or if you're in like a green Aristocrats based deck, that's very niche. That's why I give it a B. But out of all these flares, I think this is the one that is the only one that is like costed the same as the spell it's based on. Like, yes, it costs 1 extra green, so it is harder to cast, but it is the same mana value. Every other one of these has a higher mana value. It has a tax on it of basically 1 mana, 1 to 2 mana, arguably, I would say. But this one, this one is the easiest to just cast for actual mana instead of its alternate cost. So I still like it a lot, and I'll run it in a bunch of decks just because I'm planning on casting it for the normal cost a lot of times, and then sometimes I'll be sacrificing a creature, and then it's even better. But the other ones, I'm more likely to actually cast for free, and that's why it's only a B. It's not like strictly better than Cultivate or anything. I think it's about, it's very good and sometimes good in like Aristocrats. That is great.
Have we swayed you, Seth? Are we seeing player of Cultivation next clash?
Okay, so I'll bump it down to an A because you are right that there are
you
decks
gave it
that
an
I
S?
build, quite a few decks that I build. It wasn't S that just like, especially with the new MDFCs, I just don't have enough basics to support Cultivate. But
Oh,
if I have enough
no.
basics in my deck to support Cultivate, I play Cultivate still. I think it's still really good. It gets you a land and it gets you an extra card in your hand. This is, I think, is better Cultivate. So I'm not going to go past A. Like, yes, it's true that some of my decks just can't support it because of the lack of basics. Otherwise, I think the card's still really good.
This is just
I
a
actually
Cultivate with
bumped it
one more
down to
green
a
pip.
C.
You'll never sack it. If you can sack any colored creature, by the way, this would be cracked, right? But green does not have like sackable creatures.
Yeah,
but
but
okay.
it makes good use of your mana dorks, Richard, that are going to get wrathed away anyway. That's how
Yes,
you can
play
actually
the
get some
mana dork,
value
the
out of
sack
your
to the
mana
flare
dork.
of
Yeah.
Cultivation.
Oh, I gotta put it there. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna slap it into B. Oh, by the way, we forgot to go over our scale. S is staple. A is like in most decks. B, some decks or very specific decks, like a specific archetype, like Voltron or something. C, kind of just mediocre filler. D, we're gonna be very kind, very niche. You gotta know exactly what you're doing to be playing these cards. Okay, blue flare.
I just want to add because people are going to get upset at us for the rating scale. B doesn't mean it's a bad card or it's like a mediocre card. It could be like a staple, like a best card in a certain archetype, but it's just not good in like most decks. So it's very good. It's like it could be a staple in like a specific archetype, like let's say it's Enchantress, for example, or Aristocrats. It could be a staple there, but if it's not a staple and outside of that archetype, we give it a B. So just no hate in the comment section.
Get upset at the C's and D's. Not the B's.
Yeah.
Flare of Denial, blue one. 1 blue, instant. You may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target spell. A's from Seth and Krim. I gave it a C. Oh, Tomer gave it an A too.
No,
so 3 A's
I'm B, B,
and
B,
a
B,
C.
B, 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 B.
Okay,
I'm curious how this isn't an A. Like I am very curious how this is not an A.
Okay, because I'd rather just play a real free counter spell, right? Rather than have this weird condition, like you could argue that the downside is just cancel, but cancel's like unplayable, right? You're putting this in your deck because you want it to be free. So I'd rather play Force of Will, Pact of Negation. Fierce hits non-creatures, right? So there's a difference, but I'd rather just play Fierce than this because, again, how many disposable blue creatures do you have? Like, okay, if you're fairies, sure, right? But like most of the time, I'd rather just play a Force of Will. Like a blue card in hand is a lot easier than a blue non-token creature I'm willing to throw away. So I think this is actually a mediocre counterspell. I'd rather play the other ones. That's my argument.
I'm so surprised that you ranked Pact of Negation over this. Because I think that this is infinitely better.
It works. It never fails. There's no condition on it. You just got to spend more mana, right? There's no condition on it. Pact of Negation.
I don't know, dude. I think that this card is a house across any deck that is blue and plays creatures. It is, if you play creatures in your deck, I'm playing it, right? This is now a new staple in any, like, I almost have it at S, just because, you know, like, because, yeah, it is, I feel like it's a staple if you play creatures. But I guess there are some decks that don't, so that's why it's at an A. Right.
Okay, let me hit Seth here. Let's say you're not playing 8 counter spells and you're playing like 2 or 3. This cracks the list? This cracks the list of counter spells?
How does it not? Do you play creatures?
So, okay. You got, it's actually tough because you have Mana Drain too, which isn't a free counter, but that's the counter I play the most. So if you're talking
Arcane Denial,
all counters, it gets tricky. I do think this is way better than Pact of Negation. I think this is in just behind like the force tier of like free counter spells. And if you have a bunch of blue creatures, I think it is really strong because remember, sure, maybe you don't have a blue creature that you want to sack, but if your opponent's about to pop off and win the game with their combo or something, you're going to be pretty happy, even if you're sacking, you know, your Fairy Mastermind or something that you actually want on the battlefield. If the choice is like, oh, my opponent wins the game or I sack my thing, you're going to choose I sack my thing every single time. So I think it is a really powerful effect because it is instant speed. So yeah, and 3 mana is not the end of the world. Like 3 mana for a counter is not great. It's 1 mana tax, but it's also not like Force of Will where you got to pay 5 mana or something like absurd that's just never going to happen.
I feel like, so I'm like between B and an A. I think that the main problem with it is that it's 3 mana to hard cast, which is a lot for a lot of decks. Like not all of us play Crim style, draw go style. You know, like sometimes
I don't
holding
even
other-
just play draw. No, what are you?
I-
It's also
I was-
double blue.
It's a little double blue. You have to
5C
sacrifice
decks in
creatures.
shambles.
I do agree. I do agree though that sometimes it's really nice. Like if a spell needs to be countered, and this can also counter like creatures. Like it doesn't have a stipulation on what it can counter. It's like a straight up cancel. And then if you sacrifice a creature, then you can cast it for free. That's great. It's just that like I feel like blue has so many powerful 1 mana counter spells at this point, and it's not that hard to hold up 1 blue mana for like a swan song or something, and that doesn't require you to 2-for-1 yourself. It doesn't require you to have a blue creature on the battlefield that you need to sacrifice. So I just feel like because I already have like 5 counter spells that I'm really happy with running most of the time, this one is like, it would have been an A if there wasn't so much stiff competition, and I do rank it lower than some of the better 1-drop counter spell because I feel like holding up 1 blue is not that difficult. So yeah, that's where I'm doing it.
My man, Tomer. Okay, I'll give it to you guys. I'll put it to so it averages out to a B. I'll put it to the top of the B class,
Okay.
just for you
Okay,
guys.
we can accept that.
Fine.
Sure.
Okay. Flare of Duplication. Okay, time for me to be cracked here. 1 red. Instant. You may sacrifice a non-token red creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Copy target instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets for this copy. B's from Crim and Tomer. C from Seth. I gave it an A.
I don't
Do
like
you want
fork
to hear the
effects.
okay?
I don't
Why,
like
why does it suck, Seth?
Okay, I just don't like fork effects. If you want to be forking something, I guess this card is fine. But I don't. Tomer's always arguing for like bolt bends and all these things. I'm like, yeah, I don't play those effects. I don't think that
That's not a
like,
fork. That's a
That's a
redirect.
redirect. That's
the card. The card itself is like, it's fine. It's probably the best option if you want to fork something. But convince me why I want to fork in my deck, Richard. What am I doing with this card? Like, why would I spend a slot on it?
Red needs forks, right? The tricky thing is this is a 3-mana fork because a very common play is like big score copy, right? Cathartic
Sure.
Reunion copy, right? But fork is also very strong because like say Saffron Olive opens the way for 6, you fork it, right? But
Okay,
here's why this
okay.
is a kicker, right? You're sitting there with like, let's say you're a Voltron deck, okay? You have your commander, you're Voltroned up. It's the most important creature in the world. And then Phil snaps off Aminate's Augury, or Crim casts a Rise of the Dark Realm. You're like, cool beans, bro. Sack my commander, throw away my entire game plan, take your spell, and then go to town. So, like, the fork is very playable, and you are able to ditch your entire game plan if the spell on the stack is strong enough. And unlike a counter spell, you're not policing the board, you're winning the game. Someone Insurrections, well, that doesn't work because the stack order doesn't work, but Rise of the Dark Realms, you take the Rise of the Dark Realms, right? And that's going to win you the game, so it's okay to just chuck your commander, chuck your, like, very important red creature, right? So that's why I really like this spell, and
But
I'm going to play it in my fork slot, right? Because there's only a few forks you play in red. I think this is going to take it up.
so you actually have a fork slot in your deck, for one thing. That's actually like a thing you play regular. I feel like I have not seen a fork on Commander Clash in 10 years. I'm just
I
saying.
forked your
like,
open the way before, right? And you fork Cathartic Reunion. That's how you draw cards in red, right? Or you fork Big
Okay.
Score, you ramp and draw cards.
Well, that's,
Plus,
like,
you can
it's
just
a
fork a
Talon
counter
axe.
spell, right?
Here's-
Like, there's a bunch of things.
Here's the thing, though. You just like your argument of sacking your commander if there's some really impactful spell makes sense to me, but doesn't that apply to Flare Denial too? Like, I know you're not stealing it, but if your opponent's going to win
polices
the
board.
game.
This wins you the game, right? Like, there's a difference.
All right.
I mean, that also stops you from losing the game.
Which is
yeah.
kind of like winning, right?
But,
Like, yeah.
you make the choice,
So-
right? Like someone casts a Seagate Restoration, and you're like, is my own Seagate Restoration worth sacking this very critical piece or not? And if it is, you do it. If it's not, you don't. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, if you have to sack your commander in mono blue to counter it, that feels like horrendous. Yeah, you police the board, but you just threw away your game plan at the same time.
Mhm.
So I really like.
I mean,
the
I
red-
don't think that'd be the game plan. I think that's like.
Well, I mean, so if you have a disposable creature, then all great. We don't have
Sure.
to talk about that one. It's when you don't have the disposable creature where it becomes a real cost, right?
I like Richard's argument on this over the counter spell. Like, I feel like ditching an important creature to put yourself way ahead on the board is good. I'm just worried that maybe it comes up not often enough. Like, it's gonna feel really awesome when it happens, but like, how many times will that situation happen, and how many times are you just stuck with like a 3-mana fork and you just don't have the mana to copy the cool thing you wanted? And that's where I'm on the fence. I like it more than the blue one, but not enough to give it a day. You know, like
Okay, we'll
I
put
feel
it at
like
the
this might
bottom
be a
of
little
the.
bit too happy.
But I'll tell you what the sweatiest part of Commander Clash is. It's predicting when Seth will snap off the Open the Way. So is he doing it on 5 mana or is he doing it on 6 mana? And you gotta hold up 2 mana for the fork. Now I'm like, whatever the hell I casted, just throw it away, copy Open the Way, right? Like,
I'm just looking.
move the thinking.
I'm
That
just
is
looking
pretty
to copy
brutal,
my
yeah.
own spells. I want to just like fork a Price of Progress and end this nonsense.
Yes,
Ooh.
that's very good. Or you play
Yeah.
with Phil, man. Like any turn, he could just like destroy the board. You could copy it now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
red, white flare. Oh, this one's a saucy one. 2 white. You can sack a non-token white creature, yada yada. Until end of turn, your life total can't change, and permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible. 3 S's from Krim, myself, and Tomer. 1 A from Seth.
So, I mean, the card's insane, obviously. It's very close to like a Teferi's Protection, like in a lot of scenarios. I will say the thing that keeps me from putting it in an S is it is 4 mana if you have to actually hardcast it. And not every deck is going to have enough sackable white creatures for you to realistically be casting this for free. So if this is 4 mana, I think it's like kind of bad. So, or not, I don't want to say kind of bad. I think it is kind of bad. It's like not great.
I would
get
pay
into,
4 mana for this.
How do you always have 4 mana on that so much?
It's Ink Shield levels of cope.
Yeah, that's
You
kind of the
gotta hold up
problem.
No,
more
it
mana.
still wins the
Shield
game.
problem.
This one just not makes you lose the game. There's a difference.
But that's the only reason I didn't S it, is like, I think there are decks where I'm just not going to have enough sackable creatures. If
Yeah.
I know I'm 0% to free cast this, I don't think I put it in the deck. If I think that I'm like 50% even to free cast it or whatever, then I think the card is going in the deck for sure, because it is really strong at what it does.
Yeah, this is the only one where I'm like, yeah, if I need to sacrifice an important creature for it, I don't have like creature sacrifice synergy or whatever, an ETB creature like a Spirit Companion to just throw under the bus for this. Like this one is the difference between I win the game, like I lose the game, or like I survive the game. So yeah, I put this one very highly in terms of the effect. I do think that with Seth though, like so there's going to be some decks that won't be able to cast this very well, but I don't know. I still keep it at S because like even if you're 5 color, like you probably sacrifice your commander at that point, right? I don't know. Yeah, it's close.
I think as the person, like I think Seth never gets targeted enough, and so that's why Seth is never on the brink of death. As someone who is always on the brink of death and constantly targeted, I would pay 4 mana for this. Just straight up, I would pay 4 mana for this to keep my stuff.
So what about
I-
Fog,
I-
Krim? Just Fog for 1 mana. That seems way easier and cheaper.
But Fog doesn't keep all my stuff, right?
Well, if you
Yeah,
got to
well,
sack your
like-
commander to
flexible.
cast this,
Yeah.
you're not keeping all your stuff either.
That's fine. My decks don't rely on my commander. So the thing here is my commander is a way to cast free counter spells. And
I
so
will say I'm very close to Seth on this card. So white is the color of disposable creatures, right? All of your catch-up ramp, all of like your tutors, like white just has a multitude of random creatures to throw away. So it is free. But what does your protection slot look like, right? Because you have Teferi's Protection, phases out much better than this. Same with Clever Concealment. I think I rate above this. And for keeping yourself alive, like just a literal 1 mana fog is much more castable. So I struggle with where to throw this in. And also Everybody Lives is 2 mana if you want kind of this effect as well. So it's a very tough battle as to like, because you only run like 2 or 3 of these. Like you can't just like put 8 of them in your deck, right? So I still give it an S, but I'm very close to Seth on this that, you know, maybe Clever Concealment, Galadriel's Dismissal, and T-Pro are enough. Like those 3 are enough to keep you alive, right?
Yeah.
Or keep your team alive.
I'll bump it down
It is-
to A.
Plus, you still get
I mean, yeah.
Farewelled. Like that, there is. I know that's a
Yes.
horrible.
Yeah, you get
because We don't
Farewelled.
always see Farewell, but there are certain answers that are still going to get you through this, unlike T-Pro.
Well, Deluge, Sack Effects, T-Pro takes care of all of it. Clever Concealment takes care of all of it, right?
I feel like
This
we got
takes
this
care
a
of most
couple
of it,
years
but-
ago. If we got this a couple years
Okay.
ago, then there would be less options, and then it would be like the easiest of S. But now there's so many options for this effect. So
All right, we'll stick it into high A here. We'll stick it into high A here. The
The
last
average is S, Richard. The average is S.
We're at
Richard.
2A.
All right, hold
We're
on.
at
Let me
2As
update
now.
the sheet. I'm going down to an A. You have to.
oh no.
You made me do it. My beautiful white card is an A. Okay. Okay. Flare of Malice. 2 black instant. Non-token black creature sacrifice, yada yada. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers
Oh.
they control. Grim
Let me-
S.
This card is
Set
so
it to an
good.
A.
This card is cracked.
This card
I
is
give it a
so
C.
Why are you
good.
laughing,
It is.
Richard?
It's an
Why
E.
are you laughing? Okay, let me
Soul Shatter.
let me
It's so
tell you
good.
why. Let me tell you why. Look, I love my edicts. I get it. This looks bad right out the gates. I love that edict at an S, but it is in the color of black, where it wants to sacrifice.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
want
Yes.
to sacrifice the absolute most out of all the colors. So on top of getting to sacrifice a creature, I got to pick off your best mana value creature. I'm sorry. This is like 3 to 4 cards in one for a black deck.
This
Like
is the
black loves this.
This is the most
is
easily
almost
cast
an
for
S.
free, right? Because like
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how many black decks do I own that don't want to sacrifice creatures, and I'm drawing a blank. So
Stop
I-
playing aristocrats. But yes,
but that's
black
like
is very
every
sackable.
black deck is like, oh, I'm playing life gain. Well, if I'm black, I'm doing sacrifice stuff with it, or I'm playing aristocrats. Obviously, I'm doing sacrifice stuff with it. I have like a Golgari Artifacts Matter deck, but guess what? It's Golgari Artifacts Sacrifice aristocrats. So it's like, yeah, it's like what the
Stitch
doesn't-
supplier.
It's
It like
baked-
furthers your
yeah, it's
game
baked
plan,
in.
right?
And
Just
it-
sack.
Yeah.
And Soul Shatter's so good. Like you have like selective edicts where you're getting their best creature every single time, or planeswalker at instant speed. Maybe it's an S. Maybe it is.
Yes, thank you.
Seth, I've
Kevin.
never seen you cast an
So,
edict in
okay.
your life.
I-
Okay,
it's
I
okay.
understand, Krim. I
love
can
it.
understand Tober's love of aristocrats, but Seth.
So this is
Doesn't
the
happen.
formatting that I think makes an edict good. Like, because the big problem I have with edicts is you're often getting your opponent's worst creature, right? You're getting their random token. This solves that problem when you know you're getting your opponent's most expensive thing. And like Krim said, black actively likes to sacrifice. We've been talking about like, what am I going to sack in my green deck? What am I going to sack in my blue deck? That's not a problem with a black deck. Black is often very happy to be sacrificing their stuff. It can be an upside. So for me, that makes it a card that I think if I'm mono black, I think I would play this every time. Where it gets sketchy and I can't S it is like if I'm 5 color or something, I'm not going to play this card. I
Sure.
don't just like play Soul Shatter. But if I'm playing mono black and I have like random black creatures, this card seems insane to me. Like you're getting your 3 opponents' best creatures for doing what your deck wants to do anyway, which is sacking one of your random black creatures for value. Isn't that just great?
Is this an
Yeah,
S?
it's 4 cards. It's 4 cards in one for the color black. I would play this not in just mono black. I'd play it in 2 colors as long as you have black, and even as far as 3 colors.
If it was
This
just
is super soul
Are
shatter.
you happy for 4 mana? Cast this. It's not bad.
No.
for
Yeah,
cast
yeah,
this, right?
Soul Shatter's
okay.
3, so
Soul
it's a
Shatter's
1 mana
Yeah,
attack,
but this is
basically.
instant speed 4 mana. Like that's not terrible. Like
It's
if you're
not
happy, if you're
terrible.
so cracked about that effect, like, 4
right.
mana is not bad,
Fine.
right?
Yeah.
I'll put an S.
Whoa,
I'm
going to
with
S?
the
No.
I'm with the
Yes,
S.
Summer, you
Okay,
get
okay.
it.
Here's the real question: above or below Flare Fortitude?
It's actually, I would say, about like pretty close for me. Because they both, like, although, like you had mentioned earlier, the Fortitude one keeps you alive, prevents you from dying. That's great. Flare of Malice actively furthers your game plan and is also helping push whatever, like, the agenda of your black deck is doing.
Doesn't it stop your
Okay.
opponent's game plan? I don't care. I
Yeah.
think they're
Yeah,
they're close.
it stops your opponents, but most importantly, it stops your opponent while also furthering yours in
Oh,
some
okay.
departments. So it's actually about the same for me.
All right,
I'm
we'll
pretty
slap
happy
it
with
at
this
the
order.
end Of
Yeah.
A. Oh, this is so disgusting, but we have to move on. Charitable Levy. 1 in a white enchantment. We're off of the flare cycle. So 1 in a white enchantment. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, put a collection counter on it. If there are 3 or more collection counters, sack it. If you do, draw a card. You may search your library for a plains, put on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This is not catch-up ramp. This is just straight up
Mm-mm.
ramp. This is a taxing
later.
effect. And it doesn't annoy people. It just annoys people temporarily and then goes away. So you get away scot-free.
Doesn't annoy people.
Yeah, but they're not going to burn a removal on it. They're just
No, they
gonna
won't.
try to play through it, and
They don't
then
wanna
it
pay the
goes
one.
away, and
Yeah.
all is well, right? Tomer and Krim B, Seth and Richard A.
You're
If
not gonna put it in like a
anything-
creature heavy deck, right? Like if it's lowering your own game plan, like you're kind of not running this, right? This is why I gave it a B. I think it's really good, but like if you're in a
What do you mean?
creature heavy deck, why would you? Or sorry, if you're not in a creature heavy
It
deck,
taxes yourself.
yeah, then it taxes
I don't-
yourself a lot. So if you're like
who cares?
I mean,
non-creature-heavy-
I don't think that matters though, because remember, it only sticks around for 3 spells. Like, there's a pretty
Yeah.
good chance that by the time it gets back around to your turn, if this is the last spell you cast during your turn, that people are gonna like do enough stuff that it's gonna be off the table by that point. I think if anything, A is conservative. For me, this is like A, and it might be better than A. My big concern was with it was, well, is it gonna be too bad off the top late? Obviously, on turn 2, it's gonna be great. It's gonna pop off within the next couple turns as everyone's ramping and casting mana rocks. What if I draw it on like turn 10 or something though? But as we've seen with Esper Sentinel, people still are going to be casting non-creature spells in the late game. Plus, you get to draw a card, and it's any planes, not even like basic planes. So you can grab Surveil Lands or Triomes or whatever. So if anything, I feel like I might be underrating it today.
The biggest.
I don't know if
problem
it's
is
better
not
than a B. This feels like a very specific deck kind of thing,
What?
right? Like
You
This-
just literally slap it in any deck and you ramp with like suspend 1 to 2, but you draw a card, right?
if-
I think
Like-
the card is good. I think it's like good, but it's good in specific decks.
well, like
I don't think I like every deck that is gonna want that.
Like
effect,
every
right?
non-green deck, because green has better ways to ramp, right? But like
Well-
every non-green, because you can get a triome out of it, so 5C decks are good to go. right?
Surveil Land,
Like you can trigger it
Sure.
yourself. That's nice, but like if you're in a pod with like 2 creature heavy decks and you're not a creature heavy deck, and you're running this, I don't know. Like, would you want to spend like 5 mana to draw a card and ramp out of planes? Probably not. But
But
like,
what's the probability of that? No, it's
Yeah,
like
I
playing
feel-
Rhystic Study and like everyone's a creature deck.
no.
Like what's the actual probability of that? though?
Triggers off every single
Esper Sentinel,
spell.
maybe.
And Esper Sentinel
Sentinel made
doesn't
him
tax
better.
you, even though it'd be funny if you drew cards off your own, not paying the one. But
Really?
like-
Okay.
yeah,
And on top of that, like Charitable Levy is one of those things where I feel like it doesn't do either mode enough. And like example, the ramp doesn't come soon enough. If I want the like Thorn of Amethyst effect, I would just want a permanent one, not a temporary one. So it's
Yo,
a
I'm playing
nice
Solemn
in
to
between.
ramp at
It's
4
good.
Mana, 2 mana, wait a turn or 2. I'm all for it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's really good in like a Hate Bears deck.
See, I don't put any weight in its taxing effect because it's not
Yeah,
going to stick
that-
around. Like, I can't think
Yeah.
of this like a Thalia. I think of this as like, it's just a ramp
Suspend.
spell that's suspended by this weird, like, I guess it taxes people a little bit, but like, I don't think you can play it for that. Because like you said, the tax just doesn't stick around long enough. There's better options if you want to make things cost 1 more. But as like a Solemn would suspend 2 or Wight ramp that doesn't require you to be behind on lands, I think it's actually really good. I'm going to jam it in pretty much every deck that has Wight in it for the time being and see how it feels. But I have very high hopes for Charitable Levy.
The biggest knock is it has stiff competition and it's not a creature, right? Because you have
Yeah.
Loyal Warhound, you have Night of the White Orchid, you have Cartographer's Hawk. So I'm like, do I need Charitable Levy? Like,
well,
those other creatures usually trigger a draw coming down anyway from the rest of your support. So it's like a kind of a wash. This can be reanimated with Sun Titan. The other ones can be reanimated
yeah.
as well. So it's just stiff
Well,
competition.
I-
But we'll stick it. What do we end up with here?
A?
Top of B or end of A?
I think end of
How
A.
you guys feeling compared to Flare, Malice, and Flare
I
Deny?
will
I-
say compared to
I think it's the lower end of B.
Lower end of B.
No.
compared to Knight,
Okay.
though, I will
The
say that
flare
2 things
cycle?
are good about that. First of all, it sacrifices itself if you want to Sun Titan it, so that's nice. And secondly, this can actually be played turn 2 and reliably ramp you eventually, because like Knight and Loyal Warhound, usually you can't play them turn 2, right? You have to wait until like turn 3 to actually ramp them out.
Correct.
So
That's why you play All-Star Cartographer's Hawk.
Oh,
And-
God. Oh, God.
Which
Oh,
hasn't
no.
We're talking
actually had
about
an
playable
effect
cards,
all
Richard.
season.
Strix of Serenade. So Charitable Levy ended up at the top of B, okay? Strix Serenade, a single blue mana, instant, counter target artifact creature or planeswalker spell its controller creates a 2/2 blue bird token with flying. So a 1 mana counter,
Oh, man.
2 Cs from myself and Seth, Tomer with the quick mulligan to B, and Grim with the A. Grim, how many counter spells can you possibly play? This actually makes the cut. It's so narrow.
Is it though? Because of everybody was worried back when Wash Away
Okay, actually,
came
I
out
put it as a C.
that like Wash Away was going to be this terror on the format counter.
I don't know what it is.
commander.
Can you summarize what Wash Away is?
It's a 3 mana counter spell, but it has whatever that weird
Cleave.
Eldritch
Cleave, yeah.
Cleave. Yeah, it has Cleave. Or it costs 1 mana. I think
Yep,
it can
one
counter
would.
a spell if it's it costs 1 mana to counter a spell as if it's from outside of like your hand or something like that. I forgot.
Yeah.
But the main thing here is it was supposed to be this thing that was a 1 mana counter spell for my like people's commanders, things like that. Which was like, okay, well, why would I play that when I could also play whatever Tail's End, the one that Tomer loves, the 2 mana counter spell that's
Yeah, Tail's
Yeah.
or
End.
counters a
Still
legendary.
underrated, aren't
That
you?
one also kind of not quite there yet
Oh.
because it only counters legendaries, right? Strix Serenade counters any creature and artifact. These are 2 very relevant types in Commander. You might hose and surprise the one random Super Friends player, but like for the most part, it is about the first 2 modes that you can hit for 1 mana. An artifact or a creature. Just like Swan Song is sometimes used to save like your board from a board wipe, this is the other half because there's big creatures like a massacre worm that can wipe your army of fairies away or your rogues and other like merfolk and things like that. So there's the ability just to 1 mana answer any creature, and this includes commanders and anything that can be a commander, including a planeswalker. This is huge. This is what Wash Away everybody thought it was going to be, but actually good.
I think this card's pretty unplayable. I like that Grim pointed to Massacre Worm because that's the kind of argument that could
Yeah.
convince me. Because my problem with this card is I want my counter spells to be able to protect me winning the game. When I'm doing my thing, I want to make sure I can do my thing, resolve my thing. That's why we see something, a lot of the like spell pierce effects or an offer you can't refuse be really, really strong, right? So for me, a counter that can only hit creatures and I guess artifacts, things that aren't going to be disrupting me typically most of the time in casual Commander, it just doesn't have a lot of value to me. This isn't going to win a counter war to force through my combo or my finisher to win the game. So I don't think I'd play it. Like,
You
it's efficient.
You could literally counter Bowmaster, Notion Thief, Sheoldred.
Why would you?
Like why would you want those to exist?
Because
Right,
it's too early. Like you're just snapping off like a Swords to Plowshares on the first thing that hits the battlefield. Like you usually want to save it for like the Crater Hoof, right? Or the
Oh.
Moonshaker Cavalry
Sure.
or the Massacre. But there's like very
Sure.
few of those compared to like game ending non-creature spells, right? Like the equivalent would be Overrun, right? Or the equivalent would be a Green Sun Zenith or something, right? So I guess you could just snap it off on the first commander that gets played, but like why would you, like, I don't know, do you play your Swords to Plowshares like that? Like this is just Swords to Plowshares with timing restrictions, right? So I would rather just not do this and play an actual
but Swords
counter
still
spell.
lets the ETB hit, and sometimes you
That
can't
is true.
have that. Like Bane of Progress, things like that. You don't want that to happen.
but
then
can you
just play Pact of Negation? Like how many of these counter spells can you run?
Oh,
You have
no,
like
no.
10 conditional counter spells. Like
I'm not playing Pact of Negation.
You can play
maybe
Force. You can play just Arcane.
maybe-
One more mana, and you can guarantee you can hit the thing you want, right? Like, isn't that what you're really,
actually
testing it against, right?
I'll say instead of like an A, because it's definitely not an A, it's more of a B, because the decks that I would play this in are decks that function on a low curve and wants the 1 mana like advantage. So
Okay.
I think that this is definitely a B and more of an acquired, like it has to be a specific deck.
Okay, I can buy that. I can buy that. If you're really focused on being efficient and you feel like you can't afford to leave up Counterspell or Arcane Denial or something, I could see an argument for that. So that's
Well,
fair. That's still a C for me,
Unfortunately,
but that
Prim,
is
it
a
still
fair
averages out to
argument.
C.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's
fair.
I agree. I agree with Seth. Basically, his logic is like exactly how Seth says. I want my counter spells to protect my win, and that's usually hitting instant sorceries. That's why I value Swan Song so highly. There are times though, like sometimes there's a Crater Hoof, there's a Moonshaker
True.
Cavalry, there's an artifact that is like an Oblivion Stone or something that you need to get rid of before it hits the battlefield, or else it's too late. and so it's good, and I'd run it because it's 1 mana, but like it's lower than like Swan Song or whatever in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
It hits Tidebinder, which could potentially protect your win con.
It's probably a lot better in modern.
Or like a
Yeah.
it's a fairy
Urtai,
bounce or something,
Venser,
right?
yeah.
Like an Urtai, Venser, like one of those cards
Yeah.
are also hittable with this. All right. We got Marionette Apprentice. 1 in a black. It's a human artificer. It's a 1/2, fabricate 1. Whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. I think we all gave this a B. It's very strong in the decks that want it.
Yep.
Notably, treasures.
Prosper.
Activate this thing. People play Marionette Master, the bigger one.
Mhm.
And then also, just any aristocrat-y thing. So this card is insanely strong. I don't think there's much to say about that. Necrodominance. The callback to Necropotence. Triple black. Legendary enchantment. So 3 mana value. Skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is 5. If a card or token will be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Is this the most broken card of all time? Is it Necropotence levels?
It's
No.
worse than Necro, right? For a couple of reasons. So one of the big ones is you actually got to draw cards, unlike Necro. So you're getting Shield Ridded and Bowmastered. The other one is the hand size reduction. It's kind of annoying, although it does play really well with Reliquary Tower effects. Like if you can stick a Reliquary Tower, it can get around that and let you draw a ton of cards. So I think it's fine. I would play it in like a super black heavy deck, I guess. Some sort of Black Devotion deck might be its best home with like Gary and stuff, where you can take advantage of all the black pips. But it's also hard to cast, right? How are you going to play this in 5 color realistically on time? So triple black is a big ask for a lot of decks. So I think it's fine, but not as good as real Necro.
You also can't run a deck that relies on death triggers because it's going to exile it, right?
Or any graveyard synergies. And
Yes.
black is a pretty heavy graveyard color, so it does even harsher because Necro only shuts down the cards you discard, right? And this is essentially like Leyline of the Voiding yourself, more or less, where it is just replacement affecting everything. So I think it is a harsher graveyard hate on yourself too than Necro.
All right, we're gonna slap it into the end of B here.
Nah.
You're doing some weird combo thing. A note on Reliquary Tower. The second one, the later one you play wins. So you need to Reliquary Tower after Dominance hits the battlefield. If you Reliquary Tower first, then it doesn't work. So you gotta, but then you Reliquary Tower first, you probably can cast Necrodominance anyway. So yeah. Mr. Edamame, Eladamri, Korvecdal. 1 green, 3 mana, 3/3, legendary creature elf warrior. You may look at the top of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. A single green mana, so 1 tap. Tap 2 untapped creatures you control. Reveal a card from your hand or the top card of your library. If you reveal a creature card this way, put it onto the battlefield. Activate only during your turn. What? You
It was
just
great.
play
You have to be
stuff for free?
well, it's like
Very
an
good.
Elvish Piper kind of, but you have to tap 3 creatures and it's less mana. It's
And
really
you
good.
get
Like
to cast things out the top,
yeah,
Yeah.
regardless
Yeah,
of your
the-
activation.
you have to have like 40 creatures in your deck, but like green decks, half the time they're either land decks or they're creature heavy decks, right? That's basically the 2 archetypes that are in green. So this is pretty easy to do in creature heavy decks, and it's really good. It's also an elf, so if you're like an elf ball or anything like that, it's even better. It's the same dunk, right? It's just very
Oh,
good.
I mean,
it's-
for
this is
the
one of the best elf
specific
cards,
niches that
for
want
sure.
it. Yeah.
I think the question is, in green, are you a Mana Dork deck or are you like a Cultivate Farseek style deck? If you're the Farseek style ramp deck or Nature's Lore or whatever, you probably might not want this card. But if you're a Mana Dork style deck, even outside of Elves, I think this card's kind of wild because then you're obviously going to be playing a ton of creatures if you're playing Mana Dorks in your deck. So in the right deck, I think this card's really busted. But then not every deck can take advantage of it.
I'll play it in 20 creature decks. Like
That's
just cast
so
it.
Really? What?
That's so greedy. I love it.
Really?
Don't you got like if you actually look like Augur of Autumn, like those kind of effects, right? Like people
Yeah.
just play them to play off the top. And this is not tap 2 green creatures. It's tap to any creatures and then cast, get a creature from the top of your deck or your hand for free.
This
Like,
doesn't
that
play
is-
lands off the
Yeah.
top, though,
Augur
which is
bottom
kind
lets
of
you
a
play
drawback.
Yes.
Augur's
Yeah.
is land or creatures, which is quite nice.
But here's the thing, Seth. All your lands are now MDFCs, and half of them are
Mm.
creatures on the field.
Okay,
Ah,
maybe this
okay.
is S tier after all.
But yeah, obviously, in super creature heavy decks, this thing is insanely.
I do not value this card, by the way, over the flare cycle. There's a lot of things over the flare cycle, and I don't know why.
But in
Except
a
maybe the
creature deck,
cultivate
I think
one.
this beats out all of them. But yeah, in general, the flare is
No.
stronger.
I think Flare of Denial should be at the top, and then of this so far.
Green creature deck.
All right,
you
you're
cast
gonna have
And
to
then
submit
Flare of
a formal
Duplication.
complaint, and we will.
Yeah.
process it. Okay, Fanatic of Rhonas. 1 and a green. It's a 1/4. It's a snake druid. Tap to add green. Ferocious. Add 4 green. Activate if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Eternalize 4 mana. So you bring it back from the graveyard as a 4/4 zombie, in addition to its normal thing.
And they can tap for 4 by itself.
Yes. 2
Ugh.
A's from Seth and Tomer. Krim and I gave it a B. This is the highest I've ever given a mana dork.
This is how you get me to play a mana dork. Make it
Yeah.
tap for 4 mana. Make it come back from the graveyard for the first time at your wrath. Like, this is everything. And make it have a big butt so it blocks a lot of early game. Like, you're not going to flip your Dousing Dagger against me because I have this 4 toughness mana dork for some reason on the battlefield. So yeah, I think this card's actually really good. This might be the best mana dork in Commander now.
This is how to win over people to mana dorks who keep saying, "Oh, I can't play a mana dork because it dies to wrath." Well, it gets better. if it dies to wrath. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this card. Like, I think you obviously need to be in like a go tally type style deck for it to be good. But like, there's so many of those that I was just like, if you are in that, it's like one of the best cards in the deck.
You're in
It's, like,
green.
ideal
You
too.
can manage.
Yeah. So like, I'm
And plus
jamming
it-
this in the Galta.
It eternalizes itself, right? Like
Yeah.
just late game, late game. Turn 4, you eternalize it. You untap and generate 4 mana. Like, it's insane.
It's only eternalized
I-
4 as well. It's not even.
I agree with Seth. This makes me want to play a mana dork.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna stick it into B.
At the top of B.
Hey, it's not
all
even-
right,
it's
all
not
right.
even
Krim,
Yeah.
where do you want to put it? You want to put it after the flares? It's still a
After
mana
the,
dork.
it can stay ahead of Flare of Cultivate.
It's not even. land
Okay, there we
rampant,
go.
so Crim-
Just for Krim. I stuck it between Flare of Cultivation and Flare of Denial. 6 from Ren and 6 fame. 2 and a green. It's a 2/4 legendary creature tree folk. Reach. When it attacks, mill 3 cards. You can put a land from among them into your hand. As long as it's your turn, non-land permanents in your graveyard have retrace. And retrace, which isn't written on the card anywhere, is you may discard a land card and then cast that spell. So if you have a land in hand, which 6 conveniently gives you back, you can retrace permanents. Is this good?
I think this card's
is this
really good.
Eternal
Six
Witness?
was carrying Ren.
So it's almost Eternal Witness. So the downside, of course, is it only hits permanents, which some decks, your Eternal Witness, you want to be getting back spells. This isn't going to be able to do that. But this is a repeatable Eternal Witness. It's an Eternal Witness that potentially lets you cast multiple things from your graveyard in the same turn cycle if you want to. And it kind of fuels itself, right? If you attack with it, you get a land back to your hand, and then you can use that land to discard, to retrace something from your graveyard. Works really well with bounce lands, which is a good way to get lands back into your hand. I think the card's really solid. Like, I think it's a very solid card that you can jam into decks without having to build around it. I don't think you have to be like,
Really?
oh, I'm some sort of land synergy deck. I'm not going to play in every deck, but I don't think you have to build around it to make it worthwhile. Because how
You
many
would
spells do you have to cast for it to be good? 1,
Well,
2, and then you got an Eternal Witness out of it.
Well, you also have to discard lands each time you do it. So the first
Meh.
one is like a 2-for-1 for a regrowth, and then like how many lands can you even afford to discard to the retrace? Like in a lands deck, this makes absolute sense. You run this like Life in the Loam and stuff, and also if it has to attack, it's a 2/4, so you have to like give it evasion or something. Would you really
And
run
it
it
doesn't
outside
need
of
to hit. It
lands?
just attacks. It just attacks.
Yeah, but
I
then it's
think
gonna
it's-
die.
Oh yeah.
I think it's worth it. I don't think it's Eternal Witness level, which I would put Eternal Witness at like S tier, but I think you can play this without being like specifically a land deck.
No, okay.
I don't know that I have lands in hand is the problem.
Bounce
I
lands,
put this
Richard.
in my
You love the
Tarmogoyf
bounce
deck,
lands.
because I want to mill myself, right? I like a self-mill style deck or a lands matter decks. I think this goes in, but in a generic deck, I don't think it's strong enough. I think I'd rather just play actual Eternal Witness, Skullwinder, stuff like that.
I
All
could
right.
see.
It
I
draws
could see this
cards.
being a
Trust.
generic. I actually, oddly enough, could see this being a generically just
mhm.
decent card, like a solid creature.
Yes.
But it's still like I would say this is a solid B for the most part. But I see where
Alright,
Seth is going
alright.
with like a generically good creature. I think this
Alright.
is very solid.
I'll drop it
Whoa,
to B. We
whoa,
can put it in
Victor,
B.
whoa.
Fine.
Wait,
Whoa.
you gotta put it above Necrodominance.
Higher, higher
Higher?
above the Mana Dork. I think this is better than the Mana
What? Better
Dork.
than no? Get out of here! No
Yeah,
way.
better than the
No.
Mana
No
Dork.
way.
Are you
Better than
joking me?
Cultivate?
No way.
No.
Yeah,
okay,
better
I'll put it
than
after.
Cultivate.
No, I'll give
ahead
I'll
of
give
the
it
flare.
I'll give it a C just to balance it out. Then there we go. That was a little bit lower.
All right.
What? It's not
All right.
the worst. B.
Tober has updated his rating.
Well, I
All right,
put it at an S.
all right.
I changed it back.
Getting very aggro about this ranking here that doesn't actually matter in any way.
It does.
It matters.
Saying
to
it's
me.
just a B is it's too vague. It's got to be better than other Bs.
I'm gonna trust Tomer because Tomer actually plays green. How's that argument?
I play green.
Pretty
I
good.
feel like
I
Prim
play
played more
against-
green than me.
I
this
play
season.
against green,
That's
and I
bad.
know
That's
what I
true.
hate from green. So if anything,
A 6
I
would
sit
send
and
you
study
quivering.
green.
All right, shifting woodland. It's a land. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest. You can tap to add a green. Delirium, 2 green, so 4 mana. It becomes a copy of target permanent in your graveyard until end of turn. Activate if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. I give it an S. Seth gave
Wow.
it an A. Krim and Tomer, Bs? Like, what? This is not
How's it a
super
B?
cracked staple in every deck.
No.
What?
So my concern, all right, so I think I would play this in every mono green deck. I would play it in most 2-color decks. I don't think I play it in like 3, 4, 5-color decks unless I'm a graveyard deck. If I'm playing like Madrotha or Sidisi, where my game plan revolves around filling my graveyard, then I would play this all the way up to 5 colors. I think mono green or 2-color green decks, though, it's kind of a free roll. I think it's a little bit overrated because I don't know if people consider how hard it is to turn on Delirium sometimes and how like that doesn't happen early in the game naturally. On the other hand, if it's coming to play untapped in your deck and making a green mana, even if you don't activate this very often, still Tomer's thinking of Ruinations. I know. Tomer's like, oh, I need to Ruination these guys.
You guys run so few basics that I swear you guys are going to be playing this tapped most of the time because if you're like, oh, I only have 2
You don't need a
dual
basic.
I'm
You-
fetching
you
out my
fetch a
surveil
triome,
land.
and then you play the
in
shift.
your mono green deck.
Yeah. In mono green, I probably
Like-
have like 10 forests or something. That's enough, right?
Like obviously, if I'm doing some nonsense with Omniscience and I put it in the graveyard and I turn it into the woodland into Omniscience, I'm very happy for it. But like, I think you have to actually build around this one. You have to be a graveyard deck, or else I'm not interested in this effect. Otherwise, it's just a bad forest.
I mean,
I
if
don't
you're
like it.
spell
Like, think
slinger,
about-
I get it. You don't play this, but literally anything else, you take your best permanent sitting in your graveyard, copy it for 4 mana at the cost of a single land slot that's an untapped land, is not good enough. Like what?
Sometimes
It's
it
really
comes into play
strong.
tapped though. It's garbage.
I mean,
I would give it an S if it just straight up entered tapped. Like if it just straight up entered
Wow.
tapped and had no ability to be untapped. I would give it an S if it generated colorless mana. Like that's how
Wow.
strong this thing is. Just to copy for free. Like you just 4 mana.
So
And it pays for itself too, by the way. So if it's something that doesn't need to like tap, it's actually just 4 mana, right? Otherwise, it's be 5 mana if you want this as like a creature to attack, right?
But you also need a good permanent in the graveyard. Like
You don't play
what,
good
you have, like, a bunch
permanents?
of no, but like if I have an
Like-
eternal witness in my graveyard, it's like, oh, I get to turn it into an eternal witness. La di da, I guess. Like
Who
there's
doesn't
gonna be
play
a lot
good
of like.
permanents outside of Spellslinger?
I have a
right?
lot of it.
Like-
I have a lot of utility creatures, but they're not particularly good to copy with this effect. You know, like it's not.
It's
entering the
like
battlefield
Seagate
for-
Restoration. Thank you, Bowmasters. Oh, what's that?
Just-
Opposition agent. Thank you. Right? Like, oh, what is this? It's Sun Titan now. Attack. Get back my crap. Like what? for an untapped land?
But it's not even
Delirium
a
is
piece.
real. You do
Delirium
understand
is
that,
real.
right?
Delirium
is real.
If I'm in
It
a
is
graveyard
real.
deck, I'll do it. But if I'm just like jamming in a random deck, nah, pass.
Even
Yeah,
if
like,
it's mono green, even if it's like a
Especially
free
if
roll,
it's
you're
mono
still
green.
in mono green, how are you getting
no.
delirium early to where it
Well,
matters?
you don't
But
need
if
it-
I
why do you
don't, it
need it
doesn't
early?
matter. Then it's just a
Why do you
forest,
need it
even if
early?
I
This is
never
a
hit
turn
it.
down.
Not
It's
even
not
not
a
e-
forest.
not
It's a
even
not
early
basic.
then. What about I honestly in an average game, I'm curious. Keep track of how many times you actually have delirium and when it goes online.
But I'm
I
saying
think you
mono
have delirium unless the farewell goes off. You
Mm.
will have delirium, I think. Like farewell is the one that gets you, right?
I'm sorry, there's a lot of moving parts for this. It's actually not even the best land
It's
of
an
the
untapped
cycle.
land. Like it's not
It's
costing
not
you anything.
always.
Yeah, it's not even
Like-
close to the best. The black one's the best one. We don't even have it on the list.
What?
Yeah, I think
Wait
the
for a
white
future
one's
podcast.
actually the better one.
Really?
But
What?
yeah.
No.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
Boy, maybe we gotta do a podcast.
I
on
understand
these
Tolbert
lands.
because
We
he has to play
disagree.
20 basics, but Krim, it's like a free roll.
Yeah,
The
that's
red
what
one's
I
actually the
do
best
it.
one.
Delirium is a real thing, man.
I don't even know
I'll
why
tell
this
you
is
that.
here, honestly.
But even if it's one in every like 5 matches you use it, isn't it still worth it? Because it's just so
Yeah.
free.
No.
Like there's no
one
cost.
It's not free if it's a 1 in 5 matches because
Yeah.
there's so many good lands now, right? You have
So
MDFEs.
opportunity
Yeah, like shifting.
Okay.
The opportunity cost is real,
But it was like
right?
one
Like,
in-
and
In 1 in 15 matches, you get to use the delirium very well, and you're happy with yourself. But then count all the times where it comes to play tapped, and you can't play. You're on turn 2. You can't play your 2-drop because you don't have enough forests in play.
I'm just
You
not
can't
worried
use
about
the
this
tap.
coming into
Delirium's
play tab.
impossible.
Fine.
Creature, instant.
yeah, in the
land,
green
sorcery.
deck.
Fetch land.
Like that's
Okay.
not.
And then you-
it's not like you gotta play like some like battles or something to
And
make this work. Right?
And now you
But,
have to
okay.
cut your like good ramp spells like Ramping Growth and Secure Tribe Elder because I have this crappy.
Nope, you
shit
played
No,
green
those
basics,
woodland.
Homer.
Those aren't
No,
the good
no,
ones.
basics.
Those aren't the good ones because they only
Wait,
get
Secure
pictures.
Tribe Elder's bad? Get out of here.
No, but you play one basic for it, right?
You play the
My-
one base.
that's my Sakura Tribe Elder basic.
Yes.
I got my Solemn basic, my Sakura Tribe Elder basic, or ship it.
This is
Never
why when
draw
I
the
pass
basic.
you,
We're good.
this is why when
I'm
I
gonna
pass
slap
you,
it
you
at the
fail to
end of-
find.
Wait, it's actually
This is
It's
averaged out
better
to
than
an A.
Necrodominance.
no. You guys gave it an A, so it averaged out to an A. Actually, I'll put it at the end of A.
Sweet.
I gave it a
Uh,
B.
I gave it a B.
I gave it an A.
Shenanigans.
change it?
Whatever. Well-
SABB. It averages out to an A. Okay. Warren Soultrader. 2 and a black. It's a 3/3 zombie goblin wizard. What is this type? Pay 1 life, sack another creature, create a treasure token. This has to
I
be
mean,
insanely broken in the
it-
right decks, right?
yeah,
It's
you
a
know
sack
why it
outlet that
happened.
generates mana.
Actually, I can you not play this just anywhere else because
Pretty
it
much.
creating a treasure token is actually kind of solid, right?
It
Like
is.
let's say I'm not just playing like zombies or some kind of aristocrat deck. What it like would you just play this because you just have to sack a creature and you get a treasure. You pay a life on top of that. Whatever. Is that not worth it?
Boy, this is gonna be the top comment, I'm sure. This is one of those cards that gets you killed, right? That's the problem with that theory, and I
Thank you,
know
Seth.
the
You
YouTubers
say
are
that,
not gonna be
not
happy
me.
with it. But this is like that's my problem with playing it fairly. Like, yes, you can play it fairly, but it looks so much like a Phyrexian altar and Ashnod altar. These like
Yes.
known combo pieces.
It does look like a
That when you
CDH
slam this down and you're like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm just gonna like, use it for value when I sack my creatures. No one's gonna buy that. They're gonna murder you. So I know YouTube will not like this argument, but I actually think this is one of those cards where it actually applies to for me. I think it's absurd
that's
as a
just-
combo
it's
card.
so good that it's bad.
Yeah.
Seth, you
Is
just
that what you're
you
saying?
just your argument actually you convinced me and it worked for not what you wanted it to. I think I bumped it up to an A because after listening to Seth, everything I play already is that, right? So like and even if I play just a 1/1 vanilla, it's still treated as that anyways. So like the point is, I think this card is just generically solid. I'm not talking about it being a combo piece.
It's like
Yes, everyone
Phyrexian
knows
altar,
that.
right? Generically solid.
It's
Or Ashnod's altar.
generically
But you
solid.
can't play it like that. Like you cannot
No.
play it like that. You need to actually just play it and
know,
win the
man.
game. Otherwise, everything you own is getting removed.
It's
Maybe your life
generically
total.
solid though. Like, would you really run it outside of like an aristocrat's deck? It feels like
Creature heavy
Like,
decks.
if you
even
just
then,
take
like, I
creature-
don't want to just be sacrificing. Like, this is the same thing with like the flares, right? Like these flares, you have to sacrifice a creature, but a lot of decks don't want to be sacrificing the creatures. I think you have to be in a sacrifice deck, or like somebody board wipes you, and you're like, well, as a consolation prize, I get treasures, you know. But like,
Say
I
you-
wouldn't
but you
run
say
that
you
there.
play-
That's actually
say
really
you
good
play
though.
a-
You get board wiped to get 20 treasures.
Yeah, you get 20. You turn the board wipes into like mana, and I mean, yeah, you lose life or whatever. But I don't know. I think this is generically good. Imagine just being able to place wood elves, get your land, sack the wood elves.
I would put it also in like I put it in aristocrats, and I'd probably also put it in like token decks because you don't have to sacrifice non-token creatures. You can sacrifice tokens,
Anything.
but even then, like I don't know, I'm not going to jam it in like a bunch of decks. I'm only going to put it in aristocrats to be really honestly. Like
I'm gonna
zombies
put it
and
to the top of
aristocrats.
B.
Yeah, I think
agree-
this is a
if
high
I was
B.
in a pod with poor threat assessment that allowed me to play this and untap and just like generally get value, I would always play this. Same with like Ashnod's Altar, stuff like that. But I think everyone else will just be like, well, one time this guy played Warren Soultrader, we never untapped to see the day of it, so we got to remove him. Okay, here's a hot one. Final act. 6 mana, double black sorceries. So 6 mana. Choose one or more. Destroy all creatures. Destroy all planeswalkers. Destroy all battles. Exile all graveyards. Each
Oh.
opponent loses all counters.
It all
There's like
changed.
5 bullet points
Oh
on
my
this. It
God.
looks like Farewell.
This is a hot one. It's hot trash.
We all
Oh my-
gave it D.
Yeah,
dude. I remember the day this got revealed.
People were so hyped about this, right?
Yeah, yes. The
It,
day it got
looks,
revealed.
it looks
They
like
didn't read
Farewell.
the
Even
card.
art looks like Farewell.
The artwork goes hard. I love the artwork, but everybody, I remember the day it got spoiled. Somebody ran, like people were running into the chat. And they're like, "Yo, hey, did you see the new Farewell?" I'm like, "Oh my god, there's a new Farewell! Oh my god, it's in black." I read the card. I'm like, "Where'd the Farewell go?" Where like because this is more like that's like saying Merciless Eviction is Orzhov Farewell, which is closer to Farewell.
It
than
actually is. That's actually
Yeah, right?
You just
Just
got one of the
Merciless Eviction
modes.
like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that's only one mode, but like this is the problem is you have the illusion of choosing more than one mode, but most of the modes are irrelevant. like
Yep.
like
So
you know what I mean?
Planeswalker battles and counters on opponents most of the time are irrelevant. So what you're looking at is destroy all creatures, exile all graveyards.
Yeah.
Death triggers still happen. So if there's
Yeah.
a blood artist, it's happening. What you stop is like undying or something. Like if someone's trying to like recur out of the graveyard on death, they're gonna
Sure.
get exiled away. But all the death triggers still happen. Indestructible still happens. And here's the kicker, boys. You can regenerate through it.
Ah!
I want to regenerate
what
the
is this?
thing again.
Why can I
Skeletons.
regenerate through this?
I want it to be
Skeletons
that.
rising.
What's the last card that had regenerate? Irrelevant. Whatever.
I'm just saying,
What-
most of the time you can't regenerate through anything. This one you can regenerate.
There
through.
was
well,
some confusion
it's a
in
bunch
Twitter
of
for
happy
it.
skeletons in the art. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they're
That's true.
they're
Regenerate.
chilling. They're chilling. with stuff.
Rejoice! Regeneration works.
Yeah,
All right.
in Twitter there was discourse, and people didn't understand that it doesn't get around indestructible. People were like, "Well, it exiles the creature from the graveyard, so indestructible doesn't happen." It's like, no. It has to be destroyed, and then if it's in the graveyard after it's destroyed, then it gets exiled. So no luck there.
Yeah,
They should have just
bad.
given it split second or something like that.
Should've just
then
been
then it'd be
mass
they should have made it
sacrifice.
instant speed.
If this were
They could have done a
instant,
lot of
this-
things to
maybe?
make this usable.
If it says
This should be
sacrifice
4
all
mana.
creatures,
This should be
it would-
4
Yeah. Yeah, this actually should just be 4 mana.
Actually, that's true. Should just be Damnation's been around since forever. We can power creep it a little bit. So D, if you want to meme on your friends by regenerating your skeletons through final act.
It's
Or
playable.
it does get like energy decks. If
Yeah.
your opponent has like an experience counter deck, there are like if someone has that in your play group, you could get someone with it. Like there's very
Sure.
niche situations where I
Yeah.
could see considering it, but just playing
You
it in
can
the dark.
unpoison yourself.
Just
Yeah.
it's
No, you
how
can't
would
unpoison-
I don't even
have
think
No,
you
it's
can
only
unpoison
each opponent. You can't even
yourself.
unpoison
Opponent.
yourself.
You can unpoison your
Not even-
opponents and like
Yeah.
try to use
Yeah.
politically.
Curry
Like, hey, I'll make you
All
healthy
right.
if you don't attack me.
It's so funny that each opponent loses all counters, so you can't even unpoison yourself.
because they said they don't want any ways of removing poison on yourself. That's a
Black
design
can't heal.
philosophy.
Can't allow it like that.
Well,
In
each
general.
is-
They're not allowed.
Talon. Leeches was a design mistake.
It was.
Talon Gates of Madara. It's a land gate. It enters the battlefield, or when it enters the battlefield, up till one target creature phases out. tap to add a colorless, 1 and tap, add a mana of any color, 4 generic mana, put Talon, Gates of Madara from your hand onto the battlefield. Seth and Tom are coming with
Why?
the S's, Krim with
can't-
the A, Richard with
Oh.
the B.
As soon as I saw this card, I was like, this is like the most Richardy card I've ever seen. Like,
Yeah.
it ramps in any color, it phases things out. You can use it like a
mini
fog
fog.
for one creature. And then you rated it a B? Why do you not like this card, Richard? I'm actually surprised. I thought you would be very high on this card.
4 mana to ramp out of your hand is not that hot, in my opinion.
Well,
like,
no.
okay, I'm gonna ignore the
you're
phase
also
out.
protecting a creature.
Yeah, but okay, again, the phase out is like copium levels, right? Like you're planning on
What?
ramping, and if someone swords your commander, then you ramp and you phase out. But like you're not gonna hold 4 mana and use this as your protection spell.
This is wild.
So I'm looking at it as 4 mana ramp, but it's not card out of deck, it's card in hand. It doesn't get you any more advantage. It's like okay. That's why I give it a B, right? But like
Okay.
opportunity cost, right? Like there's so many things you could be doing. Like, do you play Zoetic Cavern, Seth? That's a 3 mana morph. And then you can pay 2 to flip it up. It's a land. That's so 5 mana ramp, and it's a creature in the
But
meantime.
it
You
doesn't
could do
phase
that.
out something as well. And also, I run through it in caverns in 6 drops, so I do actually.
Yeah,
I-
I mean, I did it for
I-
Maelstrom Wanderer too, but that's desperate times.
Isn't
this
this
is-
almost like a Twara too, sort of? Like the I think the phase out mode is pretty valuable. Being able to like, yes, it is ramp, which is nice, but it also can phase out a stacks piece to let you like combo off and do your thing. It can phase out a Voltron threat. It's uncounterable because it's just a land entering. I guess it can get stifled, but like it doesn't get countered by these effects. So I see it kind of like a channel land almost that can go in any deck. And it's also a gate, which isn't like the selling point, but it's relevant if you have gate synergies. So I think it's actually really good. This is another card that I think I'm gonna jam in every deck. It even can fix your mana too. Like it
You can
not
This is,
efficiently, but it
definitely.
can fix your mana.
you can main phase it, play it as your land drop to phase out a blocker and like push
Yes.
through as well. Like you don't have to do it
Yep.
with the 4 mana.
This, I was going to compare it as basically it's a colorless Odawara, except I think it's much better than that because you can just play it as a land drop. You can remove a blocker. You could even, if you're setting up a board wipe, you can save one of your own creatures and then wipe the board. But then on top of that, you can channel it to remove a potential like lethal attacker on you or save one of your own creatures, but you don't go down a land. You don't put it into the graveyard. You put it onto the battlefield. And that's like really good. Like, yeah, it doesn't tap for a color, which kind of sucks unless you pay extra mana
It does
for
with 1 more mana.
Yeah.
Which isn't nothing. It
Yeah.
isn't nothing, right? It
It's-
fixes itself.
It's also like gates. Like I'm reluctantly taking out a basic for this. Okay, so that's how highly I can.
Wow.
That's how
Oh
highly.
my God, he
it
dropped
takes a
Yeah.
lot.
Wow.
There we go.
He's going
There we
for
go.
I'm only down to
Basics.
28. It hurts, but I'm gonna do
All
it.
right. So we're gonna slap it to the top of A.
Whoa.
Two-
No.
two
Calm down,
S's
calm
and
down,
A and a
calm
B?
down.
What
Oh
do you
my
think, Grim?
Yeah, Krim.
Okay, you know what?
This is an
I
instant
think it's
speed
very
draw
good.
ghost
I think
style.
it's a solid protection spell. It is a land that, unfortunately, though, is kind of like terrible on colors. Yeah, I know you can fix your color, but that's 2 mana to fix your color.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know if I
also-
like that enough. But I don't think it's an S. I think it's a strong deck. I think it's like it's high. It's like a low A for me and a high B because I played in something like Voltron just to protect my own Voltron commander. But then at that point, is this not just a 4 mana protection spell? And that's kind of bad. So
We
I
have
don't know.
MDFCs that do that for 1 mana, by
Well, it's
the
a
way.
land.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
spoiler alert
So-
for the next one, right?
But this does both. This does both. It's the land and the spell. This is the next level
For
of MDFC.
4
Like you
mana.
get the mana and the land and the
I
spell.
mean, I
effect.
did give it a B. It's not hot trash, but I can't see myself running it in green and white, like where
I
actually
I
have
gotta
a real
give it-
ramp.
I think
I'm
I
not
agree with
relying on this
Richard.
thing.
What about
I think I
bounce
agree with
lands,
Richard. It's a
Keep
B.
picking them up
It's a B.
again and
It's
again.
a B. Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Krim, I can
Alright.
win you over very easily. This is a Bolus reference. This is when Bolus
Okay.
was a old planeswalker. He took out a Leviathan planeswalker.
Oh,
And
this is Bolus
this is-
horns.
Yeah, no, it's a Bolus horn, but it's like the rib cage of the Leviathan planeswalker he killed.
Yeah,
Oh.
but where
Yeah.
did that get Bolus?
How does this
Locked
cast
in
Cruel
the
Ultimatum?
prison realm. So
Yeah.
if he didn't have to pay 4 mana,
I'm just
he
saying.
would have protected himself.
I'm just saying, you have a
Oh.
Bolus deck. You'd probably want to do him proud by having one of his best trophies in the land.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna play it in that deck because it's flavor. Like it's got flavor, but
So
functionality, I don't know, man. This is like pretty on the low A's here.
dang.
I'm actually curious because there's a lot of good cards. Like when we talk about the MDFCs, like all of them are theoretically very strong, but I think it's the counterspell problem, right? Like in a vacuum, it's very strong, but there's like 8 other ones that do very strong things, and you can only run so many. I only have 3 basics. Am I cutting another basic down to 2 to play this? Right? Like Tomer, he has like 20 basic land slots to play with. He can cut it, right? But like, how does this stack up with the other land slots? Speaking of lands, Urza's Cave. It's a land of type Urza and Cave. You can tap to add a colorless 3-tap, sack Urza's Cave, search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. 3 A's from Krim, Seth, and myself, a B from Tomer.
I think this is one of the best cards in the set.
This might actually be an S. This might actually be an S.
So the only thing that keeps me from giving it an S is like my 5-color decks don't always have that many utility lands, and this doesn't work with MDFCs. So if you're dedicating a lot of your utility land slots to MDFCs, it gets a little worse. But this is like, this gets Reliquary Tower, it gets Cabal Coffers, it gets Bajukabaga instant speed, it gets Mystic Sanctuary, it gets, like, name a busted land, this is going to be able to get it for 3 mana, which is incredibly strong. So I think outside of like 5-color decks that are just like no utility lands and it's just all Triomes and Shocks and Fetches or whatever, I play this every single time. Like, it's just your best land in your deck every time for, I guess, 4 mana because you have to tap it too. But like, no, why not, Tomer? What's it? Oh, I guess that's right.
The activation.
What are you gonna get? this island or that island?
he's thinking of forest.
I got a brand new art. I got to show you.
No, I think the activation cost is very high for most decks. Like if you're in like a green super mana heavy deck, if you're a lands deck, then obviously you run this. But if you're just like jamming it into like your random like is it deck or whatever that has like a modest amount of mana, this is a lot of mana to activate, and then for most of the game, most of the early game and mid game even, it's just like a crappy colorless land. It's like very not great. And this is why like I started taking out like myriad landscapes for my decks too. It's like the activation cost is only there for is only 2 and tap it. This one is 3 and tap it, and then the land enters the battlefield tapped. It's like a really bad crop rotation. Like, oh, it's just a land, but like, yeah, it's a big activation cost for what you're doing.
I
don't know, man. I think
this is so. Even in your Is It deck, you sack this for your Mystic Sanctuary, get your Mystic Sanctuary, get your card back, and then go to town. Like, because you run 20 basics, you don't see the value of tutoring up lands. But like, this could be a Coffers, this could be a Nykthos, this could be a Gaia's Cradle, this could be literally anything. And here's the thing that pushes the top. Skittering Surveyor is a 4-mana 3/2 artifact creature that tutors up a cave. So you can use that to tutor the cave, use the cave to get the coffers.
Oh my god.
Yes, you just spent 8 mana, but you just
like
made
2
8 mana because you have coffers.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how incredibly broken this is, right? And let's not even talk about Field of the Dead, Glacial Chasm.
Glacial
like,
Chasm, oh god. I'm
Like,
so glad
oh
you
my
Glacial
goodness,
Chasm.
this is so disgusting.
We're so like hyped on like the end result, but there's an opportunity cost to it. Like when you're playing this turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, it's just a colorless land. Like it's not helping your
It's an
early
untapped
game
land.
plan.
It's untapped.
It's untapped, but also like when are you going to be actually activating this? Like turn 5, turn 6, hopefully.
Yes, it's a late game card. You're not activating this on turn 2.
Yeah, but also even
It's
like
at turn 8, you activate,
yeah.
and then you get your coffers, make 15 mana, and go to town. You don't want to get the coffers on turn 2. You get like nothing happens, right? So
But
it
you
is
also
a
don't
late
want to be
game card.
mana screwed on the early games because you have a colorless land that you did a really like blue-red to cast on turn 2 or 3.
But all 2
many
safe
of
and
us,
5C.
many of us are
5C.
playing dual lands, Tomer, that let us make
Yeah.
I
more
run
than
dual
one
lands
color of
too.
mana.
I run dual lands and my basics, all right? If my color
Here's
my
the mana
color
base.
has to like ETB phase something and be able to be ramped out for me to be really excited for it. The bar is high, and there's no Talon gates. This
5
is the
C
Meg
mana
gates.
base, 2 triomes, 6 colorless lands. Perfectly fine. Like unless you're Krim trying to snap off Cruel Ultimatum, that gets the job done. Right? Like, are you double spelling like triple pips or something? Like, what are you playing? It's very specific, right? In general, like 2 triomes and a bunch of colorless lands is usually good enough, right? So I think people are overly safe generating their pips, right? Especially if you're green, where you can like far seek out the solution to everything, right? Like you can 3 visits out to fix your mana like instantly.
This can't cast a Far Secret 3 visits, so that's the problem.
This might
have
be the
one
best
other
colorless land.
Yes, but it's one other one that's not a green. Like, you know.
I could literally go get Ancient Tomb. Like with
Mhm.
this. and
Temple of the
also
False
just-
God.
Yeah,
Temple of the False God. Yeah.
Vesuva,
Sorry,
copy
this
the
is
Lotus Field.
4 mana.
Lotus Veil. No, wait, what is it? The Lotus Veil, the Doubtful Dagger, man.
Sure.
All right. Wait, where do we end up with this? A's.
It's got to
I
be at
think it's
least an
solid
A. It's
A.
got to be.
Okay,
Gotta be.
better than Shifting Woodland.
I
Yes,
put it at
better than
yeah.
Shipping Woodland.
I put it at the top.
Better than
honestly.
I put it at
Okay,
the top
so
too.
I put it
technically,
higher.
Tomer.
than
by the
Woodland,
numbers, Flare of Malice should be at the top, then it's Talon, then it's Flare of Fortitude.
Okay.
Somebody
okay.
ran the math.
Okay. By the numbers. I
By
believe
the
in
numbers.
I believe in Crim's combat math.
Oh,
Okay.
Wait. Oh no. Are we gonna have the Edict be our number 1 card? We can't do that.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Never
This is
live it. That we
disgusting.
can't. We can't.
This is
It's
how
like
we
the
lose
best
all.
edict, though.
But you are saying
It's
you
literally
calling
the
it
best
just
edict.
an edict is doing it a disservice. It is more than an edict.
That's true. I believe
okay.
that.
Sunken Palace. It's a cave. It's also a cave. It synergizes with Skittering Surveyor. It ETBs tap to add a blue, 1 and a blue tap, exile 7 cards from your graveyard, add a blue mana. If you spend this mana to cast a spell or activate an ability, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy.
You know,
This
Urza's
might
cave
be the most
crap.
controversial card of
This
all
is
time. Seth with the
wild.
D. Tomer with the C, Crim with the B, Richard straight to S. Straight to S.
S?
Every deck. Every deck.
Every
Okay.
day. Oh my
Every day.
goodness! What is going?
Okay. We want to start with the good or the bad, Richard? Where are we doing with this one? Because we very much
Go- start with the
disagree on
bad.
this.
Start with the
Okay,
bad.
so
Start with
let's
the
start with the
bad.
bad. I'll go first. So it's a land that enters the battlefield tapped, number 1. So that's a mark against it. And then to do anything with it, you need to exile 7 cards from your graveyard. That's a really large number of cards. Sure, it's going to be realistic that you're probably going to be able to do it once if you don't get hit by a farewell or a graveyard haste effect. But this is not something that's going to be very repeatable in your deck outside of like being some very aggressive self-mill deck. So as a land that comes into play tapped and then costs mana, and then you can only activate it 1 time throughout the game, most likely, maybe 2 if you really stretch, is that really going to be worth it compared to an MDFC or all these other powerful options that we have in the format? And then exiling cards from your graveyard is a problem, right? Those are cards that you're not going to be able to use for an Underworld Breach combo kill. You're not going to be able to use for a Reanimator combo kill. You're not going to be able to Mystic Sanctuary or Eternal Witness back to your hand, which I know isn't the best argument, but when it's 7 cards, you're like Tormod scripting yourself to activate this land. So those are my issues, Richard. What's the S tier case for this card?
Play better cards. It's not an engine. Okay, this is not something you activate like 6 times. If you somehow activate this 6 times and have it once, something's wrong, right? This is you have 1 bullet, you're a sniper, right? Turn 8, you activate this, you win the game, right? Like imagine you cast this and you're Phil. Okay? You just copied your 8 mana spell doubled. If you haven't won the game, I don't know what happened, right? You Seagate Restoration, you copy it, that's a ×4 of your hand size, right? Or it's just a simple like Secret Rendezvous copy that's 6 cards. Like just 1 activation is all you need. You don't need to repeatedly do this. You don't need to do this on turn 3 or something. You don't need to self-mill yourself. Just turn 8, turn 9, you use this, blow everyone out with like a crazy spell, call it a day. Like that's all you need. And to me, that's worth it for a tapped cave, which is tutorable by Skittering Surveyor.
Skittering
Been
Surveyor.
a good
hidden
cast for
store-
Skittering Surveyor, yeah.
I mean, it's gonna enter
Skittering
tapped anyway from the
Surveyor.
surveyor. What does
Yeah,
it matter,
yeah.
right?
Okay, what did Tomer and Crim think on this one? I'm curious. Where are you guys at? I think you're in the middle somewhere.
No, I'm
I
at
am nowhere
D, so
near-
Krim's in the middle.
It's
I
in
am
the middle.
nowhere near. It's not okay. Come on, AD. This card is
That's-
gas. Richard does
no.
have like merit to what he's saying
C.
in that like
No, D.
if you just need to fire this off once,
Yeah.
right? That's all you need, and that's good enough to like it's able to give you something in the late game, and I like that. I like that. So it's a nice land in the right kind of deck. The problem here is the way Richard's making it sound is that every deck should pack this, and I don't think that every deck should, right? This is not going to do what am I going to do? Supreme Verdict twice? Great. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
not the verdict, but it works on creatures, right? Like you can copy the creature,
You
get
can
a
copy
second
creature.
creature. you can copy like a big spell. Like it's not just like non-creature spells.
Sure.
Right? You can, yeah, but obviously if you snap off a double farewell, it does nothing. You probably shouldn't
Right.
have done this.
I think this is good in certain decks. Getting 2 of a certain creature, it's nice being attached to a land. And it's not exactly impossible to activate this more than once. I like this. I do agree, though, it is just a tapped island, right? It is a tapped island for the early parts of the game, all the way up to like turn 10. It is a tapped island.
Yeah.
And it's not even an island, so my Drowned Catacomb
It's not an
will
island,
still
but
be
it's a
that.
cave. It's a cave.
Yes,
though.
sure, maybe. And Skittering Surveyors popping off, I guess. It ate well this podcast. But I do not think that it is so much better than AD. Come on. You
It's
got to
a-
at least
I'm
give it
giving
a
it-
C.
I'm
can't
giving
be
it a C.
anything.
I'm giving it a C. And I honestly
we've
think
changed this all over
again,
the place here.
there's an
Okay.
opportunity cost to these things. This is a tapped land. It's not a basic. It's compete. At the very least, if you don't like basics, if you hate basics, fine. But it's competing with other non-basic utility lands that might be better, I would argue. And it enters the battlefield tapped. Let's remember that. So there's an opportunity cost to this. Most decks, I feel like you having 7 cards in the graveyard is going to happen in the late game eventually, but it's also competing with recursion. Like if you're just willy-nilly exiling a whole bunch of things, like the spell that you are going to be copying, hopefully it's going to be worth it, but it is competing with your recursion stuff. And the decks that can do it more consistently are like self-mill decks, but like I would argue self-mill decks probably have better things to do with their full stocked graveyard than exiling 7 of them to copy a single spell. I don't know. I just do not like it. And then just early on, I hate it because it enters the battlefield tapped and it's doo-doo. It does not mana fix. It's just taps for a single color. It just sits there
colors are
being
so
bad.
Let me rephrase this, okay? Let's say that you had a card that was Foretell for 1 mana, okay? And at a later turn, you can spend 2 mana to copy any spell or ability.
Yeah, but the thing is that
Right? Like
Foretell,
that's
that
what the cost
Foretell,
of the tap is. That's the cost of the
But
well,
then
yeah,
you
XL7.
also have to
right?
exile
Foretell is
7
guaranteed.
things.
the Foretell is
Okay.
guaranteed. This is not guaranteed. You might get hit with a
Let's say, okay,
farewell.
the worst case is just a freaking land. You just play it as a land.
It's a bad
right?
land. It's a tapped land.
It
Like,
is
people
kind of
are
a
that
so
bad
afraid
land.
of the tap land. I'm like, I would pay 1 mana every day, every turn to give me this ability in the future.
The
Right? You're like, oh, but my temple. I'm like,
The
screw your
temple.
temple.
on turn 8, when I win the game, that's it.
So-
right? Like,
I kind of agree with Richard about the tapness. Like, I don't think that's the deal breaker on this card, but I do think 7 cards in the graveyard and it competing with other like graveyard effects and just like the opportunity cost effect. So you're like, you got me to go up to a C, like from a D to a C. I think thinking of like a fill deck and what this would do in a fill deck, like it's probably insane. Like, yes, he only is going to activate it once, but that's all he's going to need to win the game. So looking at it through that light of like, I'm not trying to do this a bunch of times. This is just, I'm going to wait, I'm going to copy my finisher. It's going to win the game. That seems like a good use of it, but we have all these new MDFCs we're going to talk about next week. How do you find the room, Richard? Because you're like
This is
me.
better
You're
than those
already
MDFC.
You're already
Those
in the
MDFCs
3
are
basic.
mediocre effects. This is copy the thing that furthers your game plan, right? Like this is a straight up copy the thing that furthers your game plan versus like give a creature double strike, which only is like for one deck, right?
Give it double. Oh, it's so much better. It's
But that's for a very specific deck. This is no matter what.
It doesn't
Whatever
require.
your game plan is, you copy it.
It doesn't say
right?
give it double strike. It doesn't say, oh, and then exile 7 cards from your graveyard to give it double strike. No, it just does the thing and then you win. And then
I mean, I'm willing to go to 0 basics for this. Like that's how strong I feel this land is, right? Like,
Okay.
This
That's
is so strong
So,
that you
I'm gonna
need to
just
jam
play
it in there
Demolition
somewhere.
Field.
Oh.
is what I'm getting
This
at.
is-
And I need to run strip mine for Phil. Like I cannot have
Spiciest.
Phil put this on the battlefield at any moment, right? Like the game. Surely we can deal with 1 Amanatu Zagari, but 2, boy, right? Like we cannot
GG.
deal with that, right?
Respect.
It's also protection for your spell too, right? Because if they counter it, you have a second copy, so you might actually double farewell,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there could
to
be
fight through the
times.
counter spell, right? Okay, last card. Oh wait, where did we put this? What do we end up? After
Oh,
all
boy.
this discourse, we're at
All
a
this,
B.
we ended up at a B, right in the middle.
All right,
Well-
Tomer, you tell me where to put this in this
This
list of
is-
cards.
Trash.
This is on the lower end of Bs. This is on the
Yeah.
lower
Better
end
or
of
worse
Bs.
than 6?
It's worse than 6.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow, that's at the
no.
very
Wow.
low end.
If you're asking me, I would put it
But
at the
6
lowest
should be
of B.
higher. That's the thing.
I
6
would
should
put it
be
at the
higher.
lowest
6
possible.
That
Like,
black
it- I-
flare. That
Okay,
black flare.
flares. How about flare? Is it better or worse than flare?
It's better than green flare. Why is red
It is the
flare so
land.
low? Red flare should be up higher. Is the
I
other
know, right?
issue.
But we had to
What's
make
the- where's the
compromises.
respect?
No,
No.
we did. We just randomly started dragging
Why-
things.
I
Why
was
is
putting
the
it up
cape-
with S.
Why is the cape creeping up higher and higher? You asked me,
I
and
haven't
you're like,
moved the cape.
I don't
That's
like
where we
Tomer's
put it.
answer. I'm gonna raise
Okay,
it
that's-
even higher.
It-
let's
it should
let's put
be-
it in
I-
Oh, wait,
A
no, where are we
tier,
putting it?
actually.
It's better than Necrodominance.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Behind 6.
So
in
second
front
to
of
last in B.
Necrodominance.
No,
It's
6
fine.
should be higher. All right. I don't
Okay.
know why.
6 was
like
well, that was an hour
Levy?
ago. I think 6 is where it
We
is.
don't have the technology to change it, Seth.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Levy
Go.
is
Technology.
obviously sits at the top along with like Marionette Apprentice. Like
Okay, last card. And then we gotta call it Wight of the Reliquary.
Okay.
It's a Golgari card. Green and a black. It's a 2/2 Zombie Night Vigilance. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. Tap, sack another creature, search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle.
I mean, does Golgari lands exist?
I mean,
Yes.
it's just Golgari aristocrats, right? You don't
Right?
even need
Yeah,
to
you
go
just play
land.
Golgari Aristocrats, actually. Yeah, you know what? This is
So
just good
obviously
in-
cracked in that deck. Do you play it outside of that deck? Do you play it outside of a dedicated sack deck? Or like a
No.
landfall deck? or something
Actually-
like that, right?
I think maybe if it's creature heavy. I put a lot of value in being able to get any land at instant speed. So I think like if you're playing a lot of creatures, the ability to have this be a big 2-drop on the battlefield that's going to like shut down any attacks is nice. And then you can just sack something in response to a Swords to Plowshares, a removal spell, a Wrath, and get a land out of the deal. So I think if I'm Golgarian playing a lot of creatures, I'm probably playing this card. Even better in aristocrat decks, but I don't think I have to be a sack deck because black like naturally wants their things to be sacked. So if I'm a Golgari deck with a lot of creatures, I'm probably going to be okay with sacking some of my stuff.
This card might be better than I'm giving it credit for. Now that we talk about it, this might be a high B bordering low A.
Mm.
Yeah, I was at A at
actually-
first and I went to B. So I'm like kind of in that same spot. Like I can see an argument for it being an A, but I don't know. B's also fine.
I would
It's not better than Warren Soul Render though, or whatever, Soultrader.
no, because it
Like
needs to
that
tap.
that card is much better than this because you're guaranteed to get stuff whenever and right away.
But this one is worse, so we'll get you killed. as
But
quickly,
any
so
land
therefore
is
it's actually
better than a treasure.
I like.
Fair. So
I-
You can also get a cave with it.
You can also get your
True, you
Urza's
can get
cave and
Sunken
then sacrifice
Palace.
the
but
Urza's cave.
you can only do this once, right? Because it's a tap ability. Whereas Soultrader can do it
You can sack
infinitely.
your
Or
board, yeah.
yeah,
So
So
it's
I
better
think
in better in response to targeted removal probably, but then Soul Trader
Yeah.
would be better for like a Wrath.
Yeah, but like getting any land is nice, especially as we continue to get more and more utility lands. So I do think this is actually, I will give this, like right now, this is close enough to an A for me.
Ooh.
yeah.
What?
Ooh.
But
I've
I
already
don't
updated
think
to
it's,
an A. Are you
I
committing,
think-
Crim?
I
Are you
think it's
no,
committing
an
dude,
to an A?
I can't. Because if
Can
I
we lock
upgrade
in?
it to an A,
I'll A it.
then
Oh,
it'll
yeah.
be better than Soultrader. I don't think this is better than Soultrader.
I think although,
Soultrader
like
should be higher.
tutoring up a land is better than creating one treasure, right? Like the main thing is that Warren
Yes,
Trader can do
but-
it like infinite times in a
Well,
turn.
Trader's a combo piece. This
Yeah.
is more of a
This
fair
one's a value
grind.
piece. Well, fairish. I mean, but
I mean, sure, we'll give it an A.
I wanted to say that it's like I would only run into aristocrats, but then again, every single Golgari deck that I can think of would actually run this. So,
I mean,
fine.
Like you could sack like lands are so strong that you could sack anything. Like imagine you had a Sun Titan. You're like, whatever, I sack it, grab the shifting woodland or whatever. There's my Sun Titan, right?
It's
like
still a
you,
Sun
like they're
Titan.
like
Yeah.
you can grab it, get a Sunken Palace, double your next spell. Like like yes, you could sack like literally anything and probably get value out of it, right? Like you get a Bajuka Bog, save yourself from the graveyard deck. You get yourself a Cabal Coffers, good to go. And then obviously Glacial Chasm, stall out the game forever, right? So there's like so many things you can do that even sacking a high value target can be worth it. So, and then of course, if someone gives you Dousing Dagger plants or some garbage like that, you sack all day, right? It's not non-token or anything, right? So if you have fodder to sack with it, it's insane, right?
And
My hot take
we
is
haven't
I
even
like
talked
it more
about
than with
this.
Soul Trader.
We haven't even talked about it. It's also going to be like a 2-mana 8/8 vigilance or something. Like, it's going to have like a legit body. Like, we're playing it for the utility, but like it's going to be really big because you're sacking stuff and your graveyard's going to be full. So I think its body's legit too.
It
I'm
turns on
giving
your
it an
green
A
card
now.
draw, right? Your green
Oh,
card
yeah.
draw is now insanely cracked.
Yeah.
It turns on the Fanatic of Rhonas. You're gonna get ferocious pretty quickly. All right.
It's above the
really
lands.
good.
It's above,
above
the
the
lands.
lands
And
above
above
the
it-
lands.
Yeah, it's above the lands.
We can't.
All right.
Are we really going out with that edict at number
Uh-uh.
1?
My
Oh,
goodness.
no.
It
You've
is
lost all
number
your
one.
No.
It's number
Oh,
one.
no.
I'm with Krim.
I am not even going to.
Hey, you
play
know
it in
what
any
goes
deck.
great with that Wight of the Reliquary? A Flare of Malice.
Flare Malice is legit. People should run more Soul Shatters. That's not
Like
no
card
cap,
is
as the
gas.
kids say.
Yeah.
Soul Shatter. What
Soul
happened?
Shatter.
All right, that is our list. Let us know what you think. Are these lands? What are we doing with these lands? Do we feel comfortable with these lands, audience? Do we like the Flare ordering? Is Flare of Malice the poster child of Commander? Or
It's the
Modern
unsung
Horizons
hero.
3, Modern Horizons 3. And somehow, against all odds, the gates of Madonna, I want to say. What's it actually?
The Madonna
Gates of
Gates.
Madara is the best land. Is the best land in the set.
I would agree.
It's
All right. So let us know in the comments what you think of our tier list. And we'll see you back here next week for more Modern Horizons 3, where we talk about even more lands, MDFCs.
MDFC.